The third Sammy Keyes book is Sammy Keyes and the Sisters of Mercy. I liked the book. I thought it was good. I thought people wouldn't like this book very much because there are problems, but when I checked all the other reviews, nobody cared about the problems. There were no complaints. So I guess everybody really likes this book. So one problem with this book is that there's a bit too much softball. So there's a softball storyline where Sammy's 7th grade team plays against Heather's 8th grade team to see who the champions are. And that's about 50 pages. So there are 3 different softball games, and they are discussed in a large amount of detail. Like I said, 50 pages. I thought it was okay. I thought it was interesting, but I thought for sure people would complain, that's way too much softball. I don't care about softball. Because I've read every single Babysitter's Club book in existence, and Christy has softball chapters in many of her books, and those chapters tend to get lots of complaints. So I was surprised that the Sammy Keyes softball stuff didn't get complaints. Another thing I thought for sure people would complain about is the mystery. There are 2 elements to the mystery that are a little problematic. Well, number 1, there's just not enough mystery compared to the 2 previous books. So in the previous books, they're sort of split half and half. Like half of the book was the mystery, and then the second half of the book was Sammy having adventures at school and at home. Well, this book adds a 3rd storyline. So we've got the mystery, we've got the adventures at school and home, and then we also have a storyline with a homeless girl named Holly. And I actually really liked that. I thought that was a great, interesting story. The author does a lot of smart comparisons between Sammy and this homeless girl, because Sammy is borderline homeless herself. She has no idea who her dad is. Mom never told her, and Mom's just gone up and ran away, so Sammy doesn't have parents to take care of her, and Sammy realizes this. She's like, well, if I didn't have Grandma around, what would have happened to me? Would I also be homeless and living in a cardboard box? She probably would have. And it also ties into the softball storyline, because the only thing Sammy has from her dad is his old baseball mitt. And that's why she's a catcher. She has his old mitt. And Heather tries to sabotage her by stealing the mitt, which is so terrible. But Holly finds the mitt and helps her. Sammy helps Holly out. Holly's very resistant and doesn't want anybody's help because she's been let down in the past. And she knows that she knows, and Sammy agrees, that if certain people get told that Holly is homeless, they'll just call the police on her. So, like, for example, Sister Josephine, I believe is her name. Like, Sammy knows, it's like, well, I probably should tell Sister Josephine, but Holly's right. If I tell Sister Josephine, the police are going to show up in a minute and just arrest Holly. They have her best intentions at heart, but that's not what Holly wants. So Sammy helps Holly. There is a mean guy that tries attacking her and stealing her stuff. So Sammy comes and helps Holly, and she helps Holly find a home with 2 dog groomers. And I figured that story is pretty good. I liked it. But as I said, I was sure there would be complaints that there's not enough mystery compared to the 2 previous books. But no, there were no complaints. People were totally fine with this book not having as much mystery as the previous ones. Like, I probably have to go back through the books and, like, count the pages to give you a percentage-wise, but it feels like the mystery aspect dropped by 10-15% less mystery than the previous books. That's what I feel like. So the mystery is that somebody's robbing the church. Sammy's working at the church. She's doing community service there, thanks to the events of the previous book. So there's a lot of characters to keep track of, and I feel like that's another problem with the mystery, is that 5 nuns. We have 5 nuns. Try to keep them all apart. I can't keep them apart. I know Sister Bernice, she's the one who talks the most and appears the most, but her 2 other Sisters of Mercy, I really couldn't tell you much about them. I know they have an ABC rhyming scheme, so one name starts with A, one name starts with B, one name starts with C, and that kind of helped me keep them separate. But still, I could not tell the difference between the two of them. And then same with the other two nuns, Sister Josephine and Sister Mary Margaret. They were quite similar as well. Yeah, they were just there to provide a contrast between the Sisters of Mercy, who are sort of like the cool, hip, young sisters. And they've come into town because they're like the sisters from the movie Sister Act. They put on these inspiring gospel performances, and they do all this crazy dancing and singing, and that raises a bunch of money. People get really excited for that, and that's what they're here for. They're here to do a big fundraiser. Two other people at the church. There's a priest in training named Brother Phil, or is it Paul? I think it's Phil. And Father Mayhew, who's the old Irish priest. And so it was a little difficult to keep track of the various characters in the church storyline because we have 5 different nuns, a priest, and a priest in training. That's our cast of characters. Those are our suspects. And also the victims, because somebody has been stealing things. And the culprit is pretending that they got robbed in order to throw suspicion off of themselves. And yeah, there's a bunch of robberies. So like a cross is stolen, a chalice is stolen, and the various characters kind of want to accuse each other, but at the same time, they kind of don't because they're working for the church, so they want to emphasize forgiveness and also, not being too fond of material possessions as well. I did like how this book, they're Catholic. These are supposed to be Catholic people, and the book did a good job with that because the 2 nuns don't wear habits. And that is something which always bugs me when I see Catholic stuff on TV and such, because they always show the nuns wearing habits. And a lot of nuns stopped wearing habits in the 1960s, 1970s. So it's like been 50 years since nuns wore habits all the time. And yet in the media, they're always wearing habits. And I'm like, So props to the author for actually knowing what the Catholic Church is like in this century. Good. Oh, this book was written in the 90s, wasn't it? Okay. Well, anyway, sorry. I did see a couple of comments, a couple of reviews talking about, Sammy Keyes is a girl of the 90s. Sammy Keyes is what Nancy Drew would be like if Nancy Drew was cool. Yeah. There were more reviews insulting Nancy Drew. I feel bad for Nancy Drew because they did do like the hip and fresh Nancy Drew in the 90s, and there was the 1980s reboot, and then there was a reboot in the 2000s and the 2010s. So I was like, Nancy Drew Girl Detective and Nancy Drew Diaries. Those are her last 2 reboots. But like, poor Nancy Drew. Everybody just thinks of these old books, these old yellow books. They think of 1960s Nancy Drew. That nobody thinks of the hip and cool new Nancy Drew, even though we've had like 4 hip and cool new Nancy Drews at this point. I'm getting distracted. So I think there are a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. I thought the book was good. I did like the connections, just like the emotional connection between Sammy and Holly, as well as the emotional connection between Sammy and her father, who she's never met. I thought that was good. I did want to mention the safe cracking, because one of the points is Hudson teaches Sammy how to crack a safe, and she kind of uses that to solve the mystery, because the culprit must have cracked Father Mayhew's safe. And Father Mayhew made a mistake. His safe combination is his birthday. So Sammy Keyes, just reading some paperwork about him, is able to crack open his safe and says, "Happy birthday, Father Mayhew." Ooh, that's such a cool line. No wonder she's a cool girl of the 90s. Sammy, wow. This series would make a great TV series, wouldn't it, though? Like, man, why aren't they making a Netflix series about this? I don't know. I mean, I would totally watch it. Anyway, Hudson, he's been a pretty good character in the last book and this book. He manages to be interesting while still being kind of mysterious because we don't know his background. And I do like his relationship with Sammy's grandmother, because he's like sort of dating Sammy's grandmother, but sort of not, and he's sort of pushing it because he loves the Sisters of Mercy. He loves these hip nuns that are singing and dancing. He thinks that's exactly what the church needs. And Grandma's like, no, this is terrible. What? I don't want to actually like sing and dance in church. we even see that one of my Catholic friends posted, it's just a joke the other day about, holding hands in church, and some people really hate the hand holding in church, and some people are really for it. And my friend's like, okay, well, my wife can hold my hand in church, but not during the Our Father. Silly joke. Sorry, totally off topic, has nothing to do with this book. Sorry, my apologies. Now, here's another Catholic joke that I saw the other day was, I have somebody in the confessional, and he's confessing his sins to one of the new priests, and the priest keeps going, ugh, cringe, ooh, cringe, when the guy's confessing his sins. That was another silly joke. Anyway, Hudson was interesting, and he provided this lesson on how to crack a safe. And Sammy uses it to crack open the safe belonging to her 2 dog groomer friends. Those are the ones that more or less adopt Holly. They do insist that Holly goes to school. So that's kind of interesting how we know Holly for about half the book. I think 2/3 of the book before she becomes Sammy's classmate. I thought that was interesting. That worked well. But during the safe cracking lesson, we get to a point about phone numbers, which I thought was interesting, because the safe belonging to the dog groomers is the old phone number. It's an old phone number, and it's WA, whatever the numbers are, 54321. And Sammy's like, wait, why is it WA? What's up with that? And I was wondering that ever since I read like these 1980s, the 1980s Babysitter's Club books. Claudia's phone number is KL 54321, something like that. I'm like, why do they say it's Klondike or they say KL? I'm like, why do they do that? Well, this book explains that. It's just a holdover from the days when telephone numbers were 5 numbers long instead of 7. Yeah, they were technically 7 digits long, but the first 2 digits were never used, so people just named them. So it's like KL, which is 55. Okay, well, 55, KL, it's Klondike. And then, what is it, 92? Well, that's Washington. And it's just a fun game people played back in those days. I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. And I guess now we have area codes, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah. So that was just something interesting I thought I'd mention. I don't know why, it's not very important. So I'm going to go into spoiler. Oh, let's not go into spoiler. There's a really cool scene at the very end of the book where Sammy steals a car which has the stolen stuff inside, and she drives it to the police station, even though she can't drive because she's like 12 or 13. And so she's smashing into things. And that scene was just hilarious. All sorts of hilarious. And the culprit's hanging on to the back of the car, screaming for dear life. And the car has like a rear view camera, so Sammy gets to see the culprit screaming. So I just thought that was funny. That was put on the cover of one edition of the book, so it's like I clearly am not the only one who found that scene amusing. Okay, spoiler territory. The culprit is the Sisters of Mercy, and you probably knew that because of the covers of the book. I was just talking about them. Most of the covers make the sisters look evil and nasty, and so I knew going into this book, they're probably guilty. Especially the one cover where the sister has the same mean pose as the thief from the first book. So yeah, the sisters, they're a bunch of charlatans. So they're not really nuns. They just pretend to be nuns, and they go from city to city. They have fake letters of recommendation for putting on Yeah, they have fake letters of recommendation, which they use to put on these big performances. So they steal the money for the performances and they steal the stuff from the church. Then they leave town and just do their scam again and again and again. Sammy figures this out for a couple of reasons. Like, I mentioned the safe, how you could crack open the father's safe with all of his paperwork. Well, the sisters have all of his information from the paperwork. They've got his birthday and all his important numbers from the paperwork that they made him fill out. Oh, I forget what the other clue is. There's some sort of clue, I think, involving thread. I could be wrong about that. Yeah, that led to a funny scene, though, where Sammy puts on the sister's outfit to try to find where the pocket is inside those things, and Brother Phil just walks in and sees Sammy and the nun have it, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I just thought I'd try it on for fun." And he's like, "Okay, I won't tell anyone." I just thought that was hilarious. Oh, yeah. But the other big clue is that Father Mayhew has a guard dog that eats carrots, and the culprit obviously fed a carrot to the guard dog, and the carrot is cold. And the only person who could have done that is the Sisters of Mercy, because they've got their refrigerator in their big fancy van, whereas anybody else would have a warmer carrot. You know, the culprit sister clearly pulled that carrot out of a freezer. There aren't any other freezers within, say, 100 feet. I mean, it's a church. Why would there be like a bunch of freezers around? Oh, Sammy does say it's a pretty big church. They've got a parish hall. Did she say they had a school? And they've got the rectory, or the priest. That's where the priests live, even though they've only got like, well, yeah, the nuns live in a different place than the priests too. Now I'm forgetting the details. Anyway, I think that's pretty much everything I have to say about Sammy Keyes and the Sisters of Mercy. I thought it was a good book. This series is strong, and it's gonna keep going, right? So next month will be book number 4, The Runaway Elf. I do like how this series is sort of kept in real time, so each book has happened in a different month. So we had a September mystery, an October mystery. This one was a November mystery. It ties into Thanksgiving. The final chapter is a big scene at Thanksgiving dinner, and Sammy learns to be thankful for various things, especially with her adventures with Holly and such. I do like how Sammy is pretty mature now when it comes to Heather, like compared to the first book where she just wanted to punch Heather in the face all the time. She still wants to punch Heather in the face, but now she realizes, like, well, a lot of Heather's problems are self-made. It's like, I'm not Heather's worst enemy. She is her own worst enemy. And that's a pretty mature realization for Sammy to come to. Okay, so next book in the series is going to be a Christmas one, apparently. The Runaway Elf. I wonder if the elf is going to be the culprit, because the elf was looking pretty sneaky on that one book cover I saw. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.